So this is super exciting. I have got a dirty list of pieces of vintage equipment I would love to get hold of for videos, and this has been on that list for years. And thanks to Matthias and Analogia, I've finally got hold of one. This is Roland's Rarest phase shifter. Let's take a look. Roland's relationship with effects goes back to the inception of the company. In the first couple of years, they put out some compact effects with brilliant names like the B-Bar Fuzz and the Funny Cat and the Double Beat. And they also got involved with tape echoes and spring reverbs, with the RE201 combination proving the sweet spot, becoming an industry standard and an all-time classic. 1974, Mr. K founds the Boss Corporation, which was primarily used to market compact effects like guitar pedals, and that's gone on to become an entire universe unto itself. Meanwhile, the Roland brand was used to market higher-end studio effects, and in 1979, Roland put out a series of rack effects called the Roland Rack, which, if you're British, conjures up images of this guy. These are pretty well known, particularly the SDD320 Dimension D and the SBF325 Stereo Flanger and the SVC350 Vocoder. But it transpires that these were not the first rack mount effects that Roland made. No, it turned out there was a deeper, earlier magic that the Talking Lion knew about, but the White Witch of Narnia did not. A year earlier, in 1978.
1978, Dummkopf.
I know, it's just not as fun to say. In 1978, Roland put out the Roland Studio System. This comprised the Roland System 100M, 4 rack mount effects, and slightly later, a microprocessor-controlled mixer with associated VCA bank. And a little twist, there was one more RSS unit that is not mentioned in any of Roland's literature anywhere, but a few units seem to have made it out into the wild. This is the PJ890 Patch Bay. If you want to hear more about that, check out this video by Keyboard Kingpin. The rack mount effects included the RV800 stereo spring reverb with built-in compressor, the GE810 and 820 graphic equalizers, the latter of which is stereo, the former of which is mono, and look at the state of that thing for you. And last but not least came the PH830 voltage-controlled stereo phase shifter. So now would be as good a moment as any to explain what a phase shifter actually is, and also what the difference between a phaser and a flanger is, because this is understandably often confused. Now, if you saw my video on the Eventide Instant Flanger and David Bowie, you might recall that I explained that the origin of both of these effects was a mechanical one. It was a technique achieved with tape machines, and at the time, phasing and flanging meant the same thing. It was just different names of that same tape technique. Later, when manufacturers looked to find ways to mimic that tape trick electronically, that is when there became a distinction between phasing and flanging, and that distinction has stuck to this very day. So basically, they're different ways of trying to mimic the tape effect that have a different outcome. So I'm going to use this module for this demonstration because it's got a phase shifter and an audio delay in it, which we can use for flanging. So start with flanging, you take a signal, you duplicate it, and then you delay the duplicated version, typically with a bucket brigade device, mix the delayed version back in with the original, and the two signals interfere with one another. Let's do that. I'm changing the delay time. You get that classic metallic-y flanging sound. You get loads of notches and nulls in the frequency spectrum. They're evenly spaced and they resemble the teeth of a comb. Hence, this has been nicknamed comb filtering. So there's your flange. Let's mix over to the phaser now. So you take the signal, again you duplicate it, but you do not run it through a delay. No, you run it through a series of all-pass filters, and the number of all-pass filters is usually referred to as stages, which is why you hear about 6-stage phasers or 12-stage phasers. And all-pass filters, as the name suggests, allow all frequencies to pass through. So you think, what, so it does nothing? Well, they do something. They cause shift in the phase relationship of the signal. So you then take that phase-shifted version of the signal, not time-delayed, and you mix it back in with the original. Let's do it. Put some resonance in there. And again, the two signals interfere with one another. And you get notches and nulls, you get reinforcements, but you don't get as many. They're not evenly spaced. They don't follow the same pattern. And that is because you've not got a uniform version of the signal that's time delayed. You've got a version of the signal that's in time with the original, but that has phase shifts throughout it. And you'll notice I'm not shifting a delay time, I'm shifting a shift frequency, which you can use mathematics if you're clever to work out what that would be, dependent on the number of all-pass filters in play. But I'm not very mathematical, so I would just describe it as the frequency around which the effect is most prominent. So there's your phaser, back to the flanger. Can you hear the subtle difference? We're talking about tonal quality, or timbre. That is exactly what timbre means, quality of sound. So one in one ear, one in the other. Let's introduce some modulation. And there you go. That's the difference between electronic phase shifting and electronic flanging.
Just a moment. I may be able to see more. Let me slip into a deeper trance.
So let's look at how the RSS-PH 830 actually works. So we've got two mono phase shifters which give us a stereo phase shifter. They are discrete. I have duplicated a signal and run it into both of them. We're just listening to one at the moment. Just turn on the phase shift and play with the shift frequency. Isn't that nice and subtle? Very, very smooth. Let's bring up the resonance, which is feedback, which exaggerates it. So halfway. Starting to hear it more, but it's still very subtle, isn't it? Let's go all the way up on the resonance. Isn't that delicious? We've then got modulation from an onboard LFO. This can go pretty fast. A couple of different wave shapes. And you can go crazy slow on this. I think it's like a minute per cycle or something on the lowest setting. You can find a balance where it's sweeping away. We can then bring in the other one. Let's plug that in. Oh, now we've got two. So let's put the phase shift on that one. And you can see there's an inverter here. So let's put that on. So it shares this one LFO, but you can invert the modulation. Oh my goodness. Oh. It's just so tasty, isn't it? It's very Roland. That sweet spot thing, just like a bit like a Juno, just you can't really go wrong. It's not going to bite you. But what a sound, hey? Gorgeous, gorgeous. Now, that's the onboard LFO which is shared, but there is a CV input for each channel if you want, so you can sequence them. Another thing to try is because it's a stereo unit, you can run an entire mix through it and go all psychedelic. So this is Vintage Effects by Matthias Fuchs. This isn't sponsored content. I bought this with my own money a while back. It's a wonderful book that goes through the history of various classic effects, who built them and how and when and what they were used on. And it's got a section on the PH830. And it makes the claim that it's viewed as a reference phaser because it's so controlled and so elegantly done that it's kind of become a benchmark for precision phase shifting. It also goes into the technical details of how it's achieved, and the all-pass filtering is done with low distortion Vactrals and optocouplers. And interestingly, Matthias at Analogia, who sourced the unit for me, discovered that it uses the same type of optocoupler as the resonator section of the Korg PS31 and 3300, so it's got a little bit of that vibe about it. And by the way, a little plug, Matthias has done a wonderful album with solo PS31 and 3300 called 1977, which you should definitely check out. So 1978, this appears in the Roland brochures. 1979, it's there again, along with the new Roland rack effects. 1980, gone, deleted, never to be seen again. So not only was it produced for a short period, maybe 18 months or something, but it was also produced at a time when things were handmade at a slow pace. So I have no idea how many of these they made, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's only in the hundreds or maybe the low thousands at best, which is why you never see them. So I am over the moon to get hold of one. And if you like the sound of it, I have made some samples. As ever, those are available on the top tier of my Patreon. Huge thank you to my patrons for their ongoing support. Thank you to you for watching.
Yeah.